What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, welcome to the Lead Counsel Podcast. I'm here with Juliet. Jules, what's going on?
Hello, welcome back. I'm excited for today's episode.
I am too. So Jennifer Gore-Cuthbert, I've been following her a lot on social media, on other podcasts. And, you know, Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
So did your personal brand evolve over time, or did you take certain intentional steps to get to where you are today? Because you're about as raw and authentic as I've observed about you today,
Yeah.
the authenticity.
This was a long journey, and I would say it even started before I really stepped into. So I went to a ton of personal development. I think I've talked a lot about this. I've done a lot of mindset work. I worked with my coach, David Nagel. I went to some seminar where we had to deal with all our childhood trauma. Um, I, have listened and studied so many personal development books. I went and started changing my look. So I went and straightened my teeth. I went to a hypnotist for a year to get over the fear of public speaking. I got a personal trainer. I just did so many things because I was thinking I'm going to be wanting to be as comfortable in my skin as absolutely possible. So what would be all the things I would do to deal with every single thing that I think is holding me back? And it's been shedding all the layers until I'm just so good with who I am, and it's easy to be on camera and to be authentic. And at the same time, I went to that level in the background, I was changing so dramatically. I'm not even the same person I was maybe 3 years ago. And all this was so amazing. It was so good. But what the net effect of it was is that my personal marriage and my personal relationship, ended up not working out because I literally am not even the same person I was 5 years ago, three
Yeah.
years ago, definitely not 20 years ago. And so you do all this growth and change and growth and change, and then it's well, it creates another problem.
Yeah, it always does, right? So it's so what you're talking about happens in the business space, and it happens in the personal space. And I am sorry for you. I know that it's a tough and trying time. I've been following you, talking about it. But I give you a lot of props because you're about as raw and real as you can be. And it is probably one of the most, so having gone through that same exact thing when I was much younger, I was 32, and it was a very short-lived marriage, and I never talk about it. It's the first time ever, and
I'm getting Tom to talk about it.
I'm damn it, Jennifer, I would never talk about this stuff.
I'm actually shocked that you brought it up.
So yeah, I was married for a very short amount of time, and I went to therapy because I didn't want to make the same, decisions as what led me to the wrong relationship. And it was definitely the wrong relationship. It wasn't like I outgrew that person. It was I chose wrong. So I had to get to know me and what was behind the decision process. But I mean, again, what I love about what you're putting out is that I can see the pain. I mean, dude, I've been watching your videos like I watch TV now. And I saw the pain on your face when you were talking about being home with all the pictures around, right?
Yeah.
And so my therapist at the time said, look, there's only one thing more stressful than divorce, and it's death, right? So you're grieving. I am sorry for the loss of your marriage, and I'm sure that you're going to make the best of what you have to do for your kids. And I follow you talking about all of that stuff. But man, I
Yeah.
mean, you just got
It's
me raw. I don't ever
it's
open up about
crazy.
stuff like that.
But see, this is the power of vulnerability, is that because I share, I give other people the permission to share their
Right,
and we have to stop as people that have social media platforms creating this fantasy that life is all rainbows and sunshine. It's
right.
not. Life is all different colors, it's all shades. You can't have the good without the bad. And I feel like an obligation as somebody who puts out a lot of content, I like can't just give you guys all rainbows and sunshine because it doesn't feel authentic to me.
Right.
And I get a lot of people that message me and young girls that say, like, like they think that my life is perfect. And I'm perpetuating that narrative if I don't ever show my lows.
The
And
messy side, right?
yeah, and I want to be respectful to my partner because I don't want to say or like get into the details of like why exactly our relationship is not working out to respect his boundaries. But I do think it's okay to share your process of going through grief, of like feeling uncertain or feeling like you don't know. Like my whole life has been very planned and it feels very like you're in an unknown state and it's very like roller coaster. Like you'll feel really good, then you'll feel really bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've gotten hundreds of messages from people that have said things like, I've been secretly going through a divorce for a year, and because you shared, I feel like I can share. Or I've been so ashamed of going through my divorce that, like, now that you're sharing, I feel more comfortable, like, posting about it. Or, like, people have shared even other things like they're having a fertility issue and they like have never spoke about it. And like I was really like overwhelmed by how much suffering people are going through in silence, that like if you would look on
Yeah.
their page they look totally happy.
And that's what I was just going to say, that I think that when people are in pain, just in general, men and women, it becomes the suffering silently. And I know that for me, again, especially my generation of guys, like we're the worst at it. We had a therapist on who works with a lot of the people in my organization as like an industrial psych. And she said men are so much worse because they don't communicate even with their friends, even with their
Mm,
spouses. Like I've been in masterminds and then an attorney will say, does your spouse even know the stress that you're telling us? And I'll be like, hell no. I want to shield her from that. And they're like, no, 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 no. You're not shielding anybody from anything. You got to tell them, right? You got to tell them.
yeah, and like the thing is that as much as you try to like hide your or shovel it away or whatever, what I've experienced is that whatever you suppress comes out in other ways.
Oh yeah. Health problems, sleep issues, 100%,
Like
100%.
you can't just push it down. And so like I think it's like I said this on one of my story, like because I've been a business owner and like all the stuff we've described, like I'm kind of used to being uncomfortable all the time.
Right.
I think that's a little bit of an advantage in this situation because uncertainty and risk is kind of part of it for us. But still, like in your personal life, it feels a little heavier than in business,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know?
For sure. Well, it involves your kids. It's a
The
family thing.
kids, it's
So,
all your triggers. But I really also try to go back to, you know, a lot of people don't know, but like the reason I got into this whole industry was because I was in a really bad car accident where I was almost killed.
oh,
Um,
wow.
when I was like 19, it was in New York. And I also had a situation where my boyfriend from high school was killed in a motorcycle accident
Oh my God.
when
So
I was like
sorry.
21. Yeah. And don't say sorry because truly these things have happened to me, but they, like, I don't think I would have become a personal injury lawyer, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
And then I was also involved in a serious federal lawsuit where my boss stole my identity. So,
Oh
like, I
my
think on the
God.
outside, like, people don't know I've been through some crazy stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like life has hard times, but like those things led me to like becoming a lawyer. Like I wouldn't have become a lawyer. And so
Yeah.
you have to decide the bad things in your life. Like, what is that narrative? Like, what is that going to mean now?
Right. Do you let them define you, or do you use them as fodder to go become the best version of yourself? And it's funny, I will give you props on something else. So typically your 30s and your 40s, and this is somebody in, in their mid 50s. I hate to say that, but in your 30s and 40s, it's really like a time of self-exploration, if you will. Right. And when you said the magic words of "I'm finally comfortable in my skin," I don't think I said that till I was 55 this year. No, I'm not joking, and I'll tell you when it happened. I do EOS, and I'm big on
Love
EOS, and
it.
I've been doing it about 18 months. And I went to the Visionary Masterclass down in San
Florida?
Diego. San
Oh, San
Diego.
Diego.
I flew out there. My integrator was out there, Janira, and I had the aha moment, like, oh my God, this incredible calm swept over me. Like, oh my God, I am 100% comfortable in my skin. I finally know who I am. And so for you to achieve that level of understanding, self-understanding at turning 40, man, you've got an incredible advantage. You got 15 years on me.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think that is the main thing. That's why I'm kind of like telling young people, like, don't get married when you're 21. Don't get married when you're 20. Like, you don't even know who you are.
Your brain's not fully formed till you're in your early 30s.
Yeah. And like, I just feel like you're trying on different things, like you said.
Yes.
And it's the greatest feeling in the world to like own who you are and know who you are, and to like, you almost like look at life with a new set of eyes.
Those young people won't listen to you, by the way. Would you have listened to somebody telling you that in your 20s?
I think about it a lot, Tom, and like I've had some like crazy family dynamics, which basically meant that I didn't really have a lot of mentors in my life. And I think that's why I've driven so hard to find great mentors, is like I didn't have an older woman that like me in my life
Right.
saying, "Hey Jen, like my grandma was a stay-at-home wife, my mom was a stay-at-home wife. Like I'm breaking generational curses for like
Right, right,
500
right.
years. I'm the first, okay?
Right,
There
right,
was
right.
no woman in my life that was like that I respected and looked up to and thought I want to be like you. And that's why I feel an obligation to mentor a lot of these younger women now. Um, I don't know, did you have somebody in your life that was like really a good mentor that could say like, "Hey, I think you might be making a mistake here."
Um, Not really. So I was adopted. I had a very close relationship with my dad. But my dad was a blue collar, middle manager of a retail store, right? I was the first person to go to college, first person to go to law
What
school.
a surprise. Same pattern here.
Yeah.
Like
And some
breaking
childhood trauma peppered throughout the entire
yes.
thing. There was like a nightmare. But, all of these different things that very much like you. And I think that's why you can get a sense for certain people, even through social media, and go, that's my people. Like if I see her, we're going to have a drink at the bar after dinner and we're going to talk about like real because, you know, I don't pull any punches. This is, you get what you get with me, and it kind of is what it is. And
I
I'm not
love
really
that. I
shy
love
about
that.
it. But yeah, I did have a great lawyer mentor at one of my first positions. He's still around, salt of the earth, really salty guy. And he basically was like, here's your first trial, kid. I was there a week. Here's your first personal injury trial. And I tried the case. I loved the feeling being on trial. I was supposed to lose. I won. And that was kind of off to the races. What I loved about your story and relating it, all the trauma you had been through with the losses and the car accident and everything else, was I think it makes you better in terms of your purpose for doing what you do. I cannot stand when I read online in Fishbowl and LinkedIn and Reddit that I'm thinking about getting into PI money.
Money.
right? And I'm
There's a
like,
lot easier ways to make money, by the way.
oh my God. And you'll keep your sanity doing it. You'll keep your sanity doing it, right? Like, I feel like telling people, yeah, as long as you're good, investing $100,000 to go to trial and getting paid potentially 3 years down the road, yeah, sure, you're good. And carrying all those salaries in between, right? But it's not just that. I think what bothers me about it is I'm observing, if you're talking bad about clients online, you shouldn't be doing personal injury.
Yeah, we have
if
a
you know,
you can't talk shit about the clients
yeah,
policy.
that's Bill Biggs 101, right? Like
Yeah, I
Bill is
love
like,
Bill. What
me
a great
too.
guy.
Me too. And it's basically the rule is if I hear you do it more than once, we're gonna have an issue in the office.
But I think also people will say like the client's crazy. We have banned the crazy talk because it's too
Yes.
easy. Like, listen, we are dealing with people at their worst time in their life.
Yes.
They are not at their best. Like, why are you surprised?
Well, look, think about this, right? So I know I've heard it. I've heard it where people will say this is a challenging client. I'm like, this client has brain injury. We do brain injury cases. You can never not be empathetic to that. And,
Yeah.
you got to look hard in the mirror if you're going to be that short-sighted and be that convinced without any curiosity at all. I think cultivating curiosity as a personal injury attorney and completely suspending judgment is key for your
Yeah.
client relationships.
The problem, the problem, it's like a lot of lawyers, they're so ego driven.
Yeah,
They can't admit when they're wrong. The law school kind of creates this, egomaniac
makes me
thing.
crazy. Yeah, it makes me
And
crazy.
it's like everything that will harm you in business because all the skill sets it takes to be like a great lawyer where you're overly confident and you analyze everything to death. Um, you have to be humble to be a great business person. You have to develop your constant skill. Like you have to question, you know, am I wrong? You have to fall. I have to fall on the sword a lot. I don't know about
Yeah.
you.
All the time. All the time. But I think that's one of the things I like about you. I put people when they own law firms into a couple of categories. One, you open a shingle, you have a job, you're a solo. Two, you hire a few people, you call yourself boss, you act like a boss, you're an
You have a
owner.
boss like hashtag on your desk.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's leaders, and leaders are what you're talking about. Humble, falling on the sword. Everything is a
But I
leadership
was all the ones you described previously. Like I had to evolve. Like
Of
I've been
course.
humiliated at the things I've done. Like I think about people that worked for me, and because of my lack of entrepreneurial maturity, I lost them.
Yes. But again, that's part of the journey, right? Like what I'm amazed at is how far along the journey you are. And again, you're 15 years younger than me. You've been doing it 10 years. I've been doing it 24, right? So
I just think
again,
I had access to mentors. Like I'm imagining 20 years ago, it was harder to find the masterminds, to find the people.
there were
Like
no masterminds 20 years ago, Jen.
that's what I'm saying.
There
Like
were
I
none.
I just think at that time when you came up, it was
Yeah.
more challenging. Like
Yeah.
now there's social media, you know where everyone is, you know what everyone's doing.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it's funny that you said that you talked about the travel and all of that. Like, so, the hustle that I'll still put in because I feel like there's so many opportunities that I didn't have coming up that I have now where I wanted to meet a 9-figure player. I was going to be in a state for a mastermind. And I wrote to him and said, listen, I want to go out to dinner with you. I'll fly in early. And I did that. And now we're working together on stuff. Right. And
Ask and you shall receive and be humble.
and take action.
Take
Ask, be
action.
humble, and take action. Nobody asked me, oh, should you call them? Should you
You
book
know
the
what I
flight?
used to do, Tom? This sounds even crazier. I would find out like, oh, they're like going there, and I would be like, oh, I'm going there also. I wasn't going there.
Dude,
And
you
then
are, I really like you, man. I can't
what a
wait to,
coincidence.
that's awesome. That's
Then they're
awesome.
like, oh, my friend Jen's here. Then we would spend the whole conference together. They would introduce me to 20 different people.
Right. Well, you know what's awesome too? Like I do that at Masterminds now. Like I look at who's going ahead of time and I say, oh, this is somebody I don't know. This is somebody I'm going to know
Add on
by the time I
LinkedIn,
leave.
add on Instagram so they
Yes.
get in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
funnel.
Yeah. Exactly.
So like by the
Exactly.
time I show up, they've probably seen like 30 of my videos.
Not only that, they already know you. Do you find because of the social media stuff that when you go to these things, they kind of
Oh
like
God.
the room kind of parts like there's Jen.
Well, it's crazy because I think I have that thing. Have you ever heard of this thing called super recognizer?
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can't forget a face. Like I feel like if I see people, I often will remember their name, their face. It's so helpful in networking, right? That being said, there's people that will come up to me and say, "Hey Jen," and I'm like in my mind, I'm like racking my brain because I always remember everyone. And then I figure out that no, I've never met them, but they
Right. Right.
feel like they've met me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm like I feel uncomfortable because they're like talking to me like we know each other and I'm like in my mind like just trying to scroll through like where did we meet?
Right.
And so I've learned to say good to see you instead of good to meet you.
Right, right, right. Well, you know, it's funny. Like Jules and I have seen it. We go to some conferences together, and people come up like, "Tom and Jules, can I have a drink with you?" And I'm like, "Jules, but it's because of the podcast, the
It's because
LinkedIn,
they
all of
feel
that."
like they know you.
Right,
And also like if someone comes up and says hi like one time but it's like in passing, like I don't like lock them in my brain. Like I
right,
want to like if I sit with somebody and like get so then I feel bad like if somebody is like, "Oh yeah, we met in passing." I feel so bad because I always wanted to be somebody that remembers
right,
everyone's
right.
name and
It's
face.
impossible, by the way. There's a psychological. I forget what it
I'm
is.
at my max, right?
You can research it where your brain can only hold like a certain number of names and pictures in your head of people you've met. And so that's the one thing that becomes crazy with social media. Like I literally, when I travel with Jules or Janira or anybody in my office, I'm constantly like,
Tell
because
me
I
who
just,
they are.
yeah, I'm basically like, somebody give me some kind of input here
Well,
because
I'd like to go on LinkedIn or like if I'm going to an event and like pre add them as a friend
yeah,
because I'm hoping they'll post and then when they are posting, I'll like see them in my feed and then I'll put a name and like like a brand together.
right.
So like, oh, I get this person. I know what they're about. But like you have to do those things. Like you have to like find ways of like teaching yourself who people are, especially if there's someone you want to connect
Wait till
with.
you're 55 and trying to remember things like that. It's even worse. It's even worse. So you mentioned boxes before, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm really enjoying talking to you. Somebody, if you have to cut it, tell me you got to cut it. We'll cut it. But you mentioned boxes about, individuals want to put people in boxes.
Mhm.
And what message do you have for people that are listening to this that feel confined by the boxes that they get put in?
Yeah, like are you talking about boxes like that you don't want to be put in like a woman like or
Yes, yeah, 100%. Like the predefined, prejudged scenarios. And so you just said something. Yes, I have seen firsthand of the boxes that men, specifically in our profession, will put women in. It's staggering to me, some of the cluelessness that I have observed. And so, like, what's the message for young Juliet who's coming up in her own career and
well,
deals with that?
I love to be underestimated.
All
Like
right.
some people are offended by that. I've learned to love it because I'm like, okay, your guard is down.
Right.
And I'm coming in and I might be employing some of your people now because you don't see me as a threat. Like I love when people don't think I'm a threat. I'm like, this is so good. you know?
Yeah. You'd rather be underestimated, right? I kind of do the same
Well,
thing when
when I
I'm,
was younger, I had a huge chip on my shoulder about being underestimated. I could tell that was like a big trigger for me because I wasn't confident in myself. So like once you have a level of confidence, you don't really need Like if something's triggering you, it's because you are insecure in that area.
Yes. Yes.
So you need to look at your triggers and you need to see like how is this actually my ultimate judo move? My
I love
ultimate
that.
judo move is like I can come in and like no one sees me and they don't realize I'm there, and then I gather lots of information and then I put it into action, and then suddenly I might be buying your law firm.
Right. And you've got the resources because you're I always say, like, you're that humble, quiet, respectful, like you don't come across that with that swagger we were talking about, that alpha swagger, but you're about as boss as it comes.
Well,
Like,
I feel like it's like a flip. So the crazy thing is, this is like a topic I haven't talked about, but I've talked about with my friends. So I'm glad we're getting into this. So it's a really fine balance for me because I'm sure, like you, like I have a lot of confidence, right? Like I'm very confident in my ability to figure anything out if you gave me enough time, right? You give me enough time, I can figure anything out. Whether I call someone, whether I get a mentor, whether I literally have to workshop it with a bunch of people, like I'm what I call resourceful. And I think a lot of us are, right?
yep,
But my confidence is not I know it all. It's that I could figure it out, and I'm ultimately confident in that, right? And you have to be kind of humble to be that resourceful anyway, right? So it's
right.
like I don't like the humbleness of like I know nothing. Like that to me is also annoying. And I think like for women, I've noticed this. Like I can't pull off the shucks, aw shucks, little old me
Right,
that
right. That's
guys
not
can
who
pull
you
off.
are. That's not who you are.
Like guys, a lot of guys that are super successful, they'll be like, they kind of like downplay. They play they're kind of facetious maybe about themselves.
Right.
Like, oh, if I literally show up to a mastermind and go, yeah, me, I know nothing. Like some people will be like, yeah, she knows nothing.
Yeah, I'll call bullshit on that right away. I'll be like, that is some bullshit right there.
Yeah, so it's really like a fine balance of like I'm ultimately constantly here to learn, but also like if you notice, if I come to a mastermind, I'm not sitting in the back of the room. I'm sitting at the head of the table.
Yeah.
I'm here to play, I'm here to learn, and there is a level of like boldness that I have, counterbalanced by ultimately lifelong learner wanting to get better. But you cannot be the woman that shows up to the boardroom and sits in the back of the place and is the wallflower.
Right.
That will not work.
Yeah, listen, but I think it's even agnostic to sex. I think that what you're talking about, I think I've defined it as this. Like, I am not arrogant at all. There's so many things I know so little about, but the three skills I have, I know, and one of them is that ability to kind of
Adapt.
adapt and figure out what needs to happen.
Resourceful.
Resourceful, right? And so once you know your top three things, that's a quiet confidence that I could sit at a table with anybody, listen to them all, do their ego driven stuff, and know when it's happening. Like, you
And
can
I'm going to
dissect it.
ask questions. Like I'm notorious for being in the front of a conference, in the front of the boardroom table, in the front, and I'm like, I have another question. I have another question. Like
Right, right,
I am not waiting around for someone to teach me. Like
right,
I'm demanding answers.
right. Hey, you're paying to be there. You might as well, right?
Like, does anyone else in the room have a question other than Jen?
Are you doing EOS or
We've
Fireproof?
been doing EOS Fireproof for 3 years. Mike is one of my mentors. I'm actually listening to Gina Wickman's new podcast and book called Shed Your Shit. Have you seen
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I saw
Amazing.
him live at EOS talk about it. Yeah.
I love that. John Knockhazel is amazing. Their number 8 employee helps lead our meetings, so that's great perspective. Um, I'm a huge advocate of all the EOS stuff. We are involved in another mastermind with a bunch of law firms where we share financial data so you can see everyone's finances. That's been
Yeah.
mind blowing.
We do that too. I'm part of a mastermind where we do that, and it's definitely
That's
mind blowing.
that's the meeting that make you cry.
Yup. It definitely is for sure. You want to be humbled?
You would be
That will
humbled.
humble you. That
You
will
know,
humble
the
you for
quietest
sure.
people got the highest profit margins.
Yup. So,
Yeah.
so what's that mastermind you're in? Can you talk about it, or is it closed? Is it a closed
It's kind of
mastermind?
a closed one. So the
Okay.
crazy thing that you find out through all this is like there's all this stuff that's going on the surface, and then there's the stuff going on below the surface. And
Yup.
that's the stuff that I think most women never get to, is
Yeah.
that there's a lot of stuff in our industry that's invite only. You
Right.
gotta like know somebody.
But you
Somebody
got to get into those rooms. Like you put yourself in those rooms. You're in every room.
I'm
You're
in every room.
literally in every room. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I'm like,
You do the same thing.
I know, because no one's going to invite you. You got to invite yourself. You do pay to enter.
Yeah.
But
I
then
be on
once you're there, here's
show
what I've
up.
been finding.
Show up.
I went into rooms. I was like, what the hell am I doing here? And then you know what? People started learning stuff from me as I showed what I was confident in my skill set, that I could answer questions, and I was willing to just give relentlessly give value wherever I could, no matter how big somebody was. If they were,
Yeah. And like it's hard. Like 90% of the battle is just showing up, because once you're there, opportunities present themselves, you know.
yeah,
I've made tons of mistakes. I've trusted the wrong people. You know, our industry has all kinds of different people, but I always try to like take the high road even if something doesn't work out. I don't try to like burn down relationships in the industry. I want to like have a very long-term view, and you know, it can be challenging. Like there's men in the industry that if I'm not careful, like they have bad intentions. Like as a young woman, you have to know that the industry can be, there are dark sides, you know?
yes. Yeah, for sure. And listen, and there's a big underbelly to subsectors, right? Like I have friends, and I've been doing in the mass tort space for years in terms
Oh
of
yeah.
as an investor, right? And I would warn people like, look, it's a relationship business, and you're going to get soaked if you got the wrong relationships. And I'm happy. What I do is I take my 9-figure mentor, and because the guy opened up a world to me, he didn't have to open up. I introduced any of my friends to him. I go, this is the way it works. This is the value driven to him and for him and by him. Just be respectful. Just be respectful of what I'm about to do with you and for you. And I don't get anything out of it other than, like you said, because he was so good to me. My way of saying thanks is I've introduced him to law firms across the country that now become a feeder for him on top of me, right?
It's
There's
so
plenty to go
smart.
around.
It's business. This is what you get. That's why you're successful. And that's why, you know, everybody has to understand your brand. You don't want to be a taker.
No. And that goes back to that. You asked me the question about the young buck swagger. I am constantly trying to give. But the last thing I want is somebody who's just looking to take. Literally, like I would help you because I learned from you in a podcast where you were ruthlessly brilliant and you were raw, and you said something that literally changed my game. It changed my game. I
I'm
can't
so
say
glad.
thank you
This is why
enough.
we do these podcasts.
But
Is
people
somebody
don't
can have a
realize, like,
breakthrough.
what do you get out of the podcast, right? I'm obsessed with podcasts. What do you get out of it? I get to talk to people like you, and you were a monumental shift for me. You didn't even know me at
I
the
didn't even
time.
know.
I reached out to you on LinkedIn after I listened to that podcast. I was in the middle of listening to it. I said, look, I'm just listening to you, Mansky's podcast. You were awesome. I want to get you on my podcast. I did this podcast to talk to people like you. All the guests that I have, like, are people that I want to get to know.
I've met so many amazing people through podcasts. Like I saw you interviewed my friend Jeff Sterling.
Yes, yeah,
Another
he's a
amazing person.
what a story, man.
I told him, I'm like, I can't believe like the family law industry doesn't have the same kind of like thing like our industry has, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But, when you say the thing, you mean the mastermind or the
Like all
scaling
of it.
businesses?
Yeah.
Well, look, I said to him, I'm like, dude, you got to do that stuff
He's got to
because
create it.
you got to create it because there's a market for it. You're the only family lawyer I know doing what you're doing at those numbers. And
I
literally,
agree.
it's a business in the making.
It
So, I
is.
mean, he's brilliant too. He's a multipreneur. He has multiple businesses. So, real quick, I always finish with one question, and I want to be respectful of your time, though I feel like I could talk to you for hours. What would you point to as the biggest needle mover of your career thus far?
As we've been discussing, coaching and mentors.
Awesome.
It's the key hack.
Awesome.
Yeah. If
Yeah, a
you
lot of people say
find
a lot of
somebody
people
with
say.
the results you want, and I've never heard somebody really very rarely turn you down. And for me, I think finding people in other markets, they're more honest. They don't perceive you as a threat.
Right.
Like somebody in California doesn't care what I'm doing in Atlanta.
Right. Yeah, and Atlanta's got a really cutthroat market, man. It's tough out there.
It's
Holy
so
cow.
funny. People always say that to me, and I'm from New York, so I'm thinking like, what are you talking about? Like,
Right. Well, I think you have a couple of really outspoken players that kind of set a tone in the market of Atlanta.
it's
So,
funny because I'm friends with some of them,
yeah,
and like, I don't think they look like me. I don't think their message is the same.
right, right,
And by the way, there's 25,000 accidents like a month in Atlanta. So
right. There's plenty to
nobody's
go
getting
around. There's plenty to go
nobody's getting
around.
I mean, my bigger concern is all the people going down to State Farm over here in Gwinnett picking up their checks.
Right.
No lawyer.
Without hiring a lawyer. And I will tell you, I heard that recently at a conference. Like every PI lawyer is fighting over 50% of the available cases out there because the other 50% never hire a lawyer.
That's
So
that's what I'm focused on.
our competition is not each other. Our competition is the insurance companies,
I mean,
same as it's
the
always
only
been.
thing I think that our competition is actually like kind of similar is our labor pool, but that has significantly changed since the pandemic because now we're hiring people all over the country. But
Yes.
I think that is the awkwardness sometimes with when you're around other people in your market is like they might have people that used to work for you, you might have people that, it's like a weird incestuous pool.
Yeah. But I also think that very few firms do the coaching that you do or I've done. And that's the competitive edge in the labor
True.
market. That
True.
and your social media, because like when people come into me, especially I only meet with attorneys now. I don't do the hiring or anything for anything else. Everybody says, I've been listening to your podcast, I follow you on LinkedIn. And
They
it's
know who
kind
you
of
are.
it's that know you, like you, trust you before they walk through the door.
Yeah,
Right.
we
And you
get a
probably see
lot
that
of
too.
that. We get a
Yeah.
lot of young girls in law school that we have like four student interns this summer that and one of them is in business school, but like they'll send me messages like I want to come work for your firm because I want to be like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, the social media also has an recruiting arm.
100%. I mean, I did a 3-pronged strategy before I posted anything on LinkedIn. It was B2B marketing, B2C marketing, and recruiting. Recruiting is
Recruiting.
marketing to your potential labor pool. And if you're not
100%.
if you're not doing it, that's why you're complaining that it's hard to hire, right? Like so it's just different.
I will
Uh,
say it's still hard to hire. I'm waiting for like some kind of reset because hiring has been the biggest challenge I think everyone in the whole industry has been dealing with for the last 4 years.
I think yes. I think that there's a lot of competitive advantages you can establish for yourself with certain practices, right?
Yeah,
Like
we have
in
an
New York,
in-house recruiter. I have a
yeah, same,
full-time in-house recruiter.
same,
And but the thing is like I just think even some of my mentors, they have people that have worked there 19 years, 20 years. I think the challenge has been in the last decade that people don't see themselves working somewhere
right,
forever. It's like a
right.
mentality shift.
COVID changed a lot of it, so you're gonna have to kind of roll with the punches, right? You
Pivot.
adapt and you overcome, you pivot, right? So I do think that COVID shifted to where there's not going to be a lot of entry level positions. There's not going to be a lot of training positions. Not if people want these exorbitant salaries. I might as well just pay more and get a really seasoned 10-year for a position, and I don't have to deal with a lot of that other stuff. So I think there's a lot of pivoting that's going to happen in the employment space for sure with law firms. So what do you like, before we wrap up, is there anything that you're working on or that you want to promote or anything like that? Because having you on was awesome. I'd love to, whatever you ever have anything to promote, you come back on. It's predominantly lawyers that are listening to the show, and
Yeah. So I'm speaking at a big conference out in Scottsdale called PimCon. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I was tossing up going. I
You
haven't
should
been
come.
there yet. I was tossing it up. It's coming up when? When is it?
It's in Scottsdale in September. Chris Dreyer, who has the Personal Injury Mastermind podcast, it's his first event, and
Yep.
me and Alexa from my marketing department were some of the headliner speakers, and I think it's going to
Nice.
be a really awesome event. You guys can reach out to me, email me. I, basically started coaching a bunch of firms that were under 20 people. I have about 40-ish people now, and it's been really awesome helping them kind of like avoid some of the mistakes, especially some of the women. I've been doing some leadership workshops for women lawyers, and women just have a lot of other issues they're dealing with, like the mom guilt, how to balance work and life. Um, we didn't even get into all that, but like that's a big passion because it's amazing to me that you got women who own multi-million dollar law firms or could have multi-million dollar and they're cleaning their own house.
Yes. So listen,
Like,
we could do a whole nother podcast on this, but I will say this. I have spoken to many powerful female leaders on this show, you being one. My friend Sue Ann Van Dermenden, if you get a chance to listen to that podcast. And I try to put myself in your shoes. And I go, I don't know. Like, I think that I'm not sure if it was you or somebody else that put out recently, like, you should be doing the same outsourcing that you do in your
men do.
business that men
And
do.
in the house. Yeah,
In
like
the
I don't
house. In the house.
I
Yeah.
try to live in my house like a hotel.
Right. Have people doing stuff. Well, look, think about the effective hourly rate that you should be getting as the CEO of your law firm, right? Anything below that is
Outsource.
not a good resource, use
your
of
time.
resource.
And it
Right.
makes you feel bad. Like cleaning your own toilet. Are we crazy? Even if you're a billable lawyer, if you can make $500 an hour and you're doing a
Right.
25 an hour dollar job
Right.
and
And
you don't
that's,
like it, what are we
yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
But you know what? I say to the women, I literally led this workshop last week. I said, how many of you guys are cleaning your own house? Hands go up.
Oh my God.
Why? Well, because I feel like that's what a good mom wife does. I was like,
Yeah.
today was your permission slip to give that up today and immediately go
Right.
hire a housekeeper and an executive assistant and someone to
Yeah.
mow the grass.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it's kind of a running joke in my house. And Juliet knows, right? Like, my wife would be like, you need to take the garbage out. I'm like, no, you got the wrong one. That's not my job, right? Like, that's not my pay grade.
We need
So,
like a handyman around the house now.
dude, I need everybody
Need a
around
pool
my house.
boy.
Not
Yeah.
to mention, I'm a mess. Like, if you give me a hammer, it just costs me double to get the repairs done because I effed something up. So, yeah.
Self-awareness.
But listen, I think that your message is super powerful, and
Most people are just waiting for permission. That's like in
that's
coaching,
crazy. That's crazy.
90% of the coaching is I have a great idea. Is somebody going to give me permission to do it?
Right.
You know,
Who's got to give
or
you permission?
yeah. So it's been really rewarding. I think it's just also you learn so much from people you're mentoring because
Yeah.
you can see issues that you think like are they're harder to see in yourself, but you can see them in other people.
Yeah, and you start to get a better understanding of yourself when you start to see how other people's issues are playing out and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well,
100%.
this was so fun.
I was just going to say, having you on, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So I'm really happy that you made time.